Well, we've seen a couple of things happen when organizations have a very strong collaboration or a collaborative executive team. It actually has a strong correlation to better revenue growth, better profitability, and if it's a publicly traded organization, a strong correlation to shareholder return as well. So lots of really good metricy financial things that come along with it. But in all honesty, too, there's a human component. So many CHROs tell us that it's simply something that so many leaders aspire to and are drawn to within the organization on a very human level beyond the metrics too. CHROs know when that collaboration is working within their executive leadership team when there are basically kind of three hints or three triggers that they look at. The first is that the executive leaders themselves are really drawn towards the collaborations that make the most impact. I mean, we ask so much of our executive leaders right now, they've got so much going on, they can't collaborate everywhere. But having a mechanism to really see the most important places, the most impact that they can drive through collaboration and prioritizing accordingly. That's the first thing that they should look for. The second thing is really around whether non-traditional collaborations are happening naturally. So when they look at their executive leaders across the organization, are people pairing up or grouping up in ways that we might not expect? So for example, right now, so many organizations are working on AI and its role within the organization, but that's a perfect place for someone from the technology sphere and someone from the HR sphere. So the technology and the human component to work together. And that might not be something that traditionally happens, but we see collaborations be all the stronger when those non-traditional partnerships take form. And then finally, the last thing to look out for is where there's some clear ways to get a sense of accountability, whether it be metrics or goals or anything along those lines. What we see many organizations do is that they fall into the trap of having everybody own the thing. We all own this particular collaboration, and so as a result, nobody really owns it. So we see organizations that are successful at this get a little bit more specific around what few metrics or what few goals and which few individuals will actually own that. Those are the three things that we'd be on the lookout for to say, you know what, this organization's getting it right. Unfortunately, what CHROs are telling us is that the percentage of organizations out there with highly collaborative relationships in their executive leader teams is not very high. Actually, right now, only about a quarter of CHROs would say, you know what, I feel really strongly that we have a good collaborative system going. Different individuals will tell you about different aspects of collaboration, but only about a quarter of CHROs will say that this is a strong aspect of their executive leadership team. We also see about half of CHROs, actually slightly less than half, that'll say that executives have a really good view as to what are the overall projects that are within their organization. They might have views here and there, or they might have views of total work, but not where really good collaboration could take place. And also, about less than half of CHROs would tell us that they have really good accountability in place as well. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of the lay of the land. Basically, not high, but lots of room for opportunity. One of the main things is that we see organizations making a lot of effort, especially after the pandemic, around relationship building. And there are a lot of natural reasons for that. We want to bring people together, we want to reintroduce individuals who may have been hired since the pandemic or may have been scattered or remote in lots of different working situations. So we see a lot of uptick in things like retreats, offsite development experiences, conflict resolution sessions, and we see a lot of time and effort going into those. And they can be good, but they are not sufficient for collaboration. So what ends up happening is that we invest heavily in these things. We think collaboration will happen, and that's not necessarily the case. And what complicates things then too is executives are extremely busy. They may not see where the most important places for collaboration to take place are. They just can't see it in the scope of everything that's on their plate. We also see that people gravitate towards the partners that they know. So strong relationships become stronger, but we don't necessarily see leaders branching out of some of the relationships that they know best. And then we also just see, as I mentioned, some of those general accountability measures. So we don't see necessarily that open expectation or the processes and systems that would reinforce that expectation of collaboration. And those things all together really stand in the way of organizations making progress on this. One example is when we think about visualizing those places to prioritize collaboration, CHROs have a vantage point. They see different workflows across the organization, and they also have a close relationship with the CEO, so they're close to the priorities. And if we want our leaders to see those places for collaboration with impact better, the easiest thing to do is to give them a visual. And so we've seen CHROs do heat maps, we've seen CHROs do 2x2s, we've seen CHROs do priority maps, but bringing together of all the things that are out there, by what decision criteria can we get to just a few things that we should work on? And so bringing those tools, making them part of the executive leadership team meetings, making sure that we're all holding hands on the big decision criteria, that's a really big place where CHROs can make an impact. One of the things that sticks out for me is that a lot of the tools that successful organizations end up using aren't necessarily big or complicated or new or foreign. They use heat maps in other parts of their business. They use priority indices in other parts of their business. They, would set goals or metrics or criteria in other parts of their business. It's just that sometimes we forget to use the best tools that we have on ourselves. And oftentimes there are some of these just really practical tools, like I said, visualizing where it can be best, making those connections, and then reinforcing the expectation that make the biggest impact. And it's just in that day-to-day habit, we forget to look back to the things that we know and are familiar and work really well and just apply it to ourselves. We also see CHROs making an impact and helping to kind of nudge along those non-traditional relationships. So for example, if a CHRO has worked with one part of the business, say the CIO on a big talent review, and then the following year it's marketing's turn or sales turn or some other function, those are relationships that they can bring together so that those are opportunities for different functions to work together, capture what they've learned, and just be exposed to different types of thinking, as well as be aligned in what we're trying to do from an organizational perspective. And then on the metrics and accountability, this is where the CHRO can play a really unique role in partnership with the CEO about what is it that we will highlight and reward. So for example, one of the things that we've seen CHROs do is take the leadership team a little bit away from that big list of metrics that everybody owns and everybody's accountable for. And in a particular collaboration project, really just narrow it down to 2 or 3 things and make sure that those 2 or 3 metrics are owned by the 2 or 3 individuals that can impact it the most. Again, they can help steer the group away from that danger zone of if we all own it, then nobody owns it, but be a little bit more specific. Could be through metrics, could be through goal statements at the beginning of the year, could be through setting the expectation. But that's where CHROs can use their unique role to really drive some of that collaboration forward in the executive team. A couple of things that come to mind on the bumps that organizations oftentimes face here within collaboration. First of all, there is a temptation, because collaboration is something we all want more of, to just simply make the landscape too broad. And where CHROs can really help their executives is to help them narrow down of all the places where we could collaborate, where just the few key places where we should collaborate. And again, they can help by helping executive leaders visualize, by getting to a decision set or criteria, by making that a standing part of the agenda with their executive leadership teams, but really helping to bring teams away from that notion of we could do it everywhere to it really would make sense for us to do it in these few places for impact. The second place where we see organizations run into bumps as well is just getting into the daily almost grind of everything. And so because of everything going on in organizations, we see that a lot of times our leaders just default to the things that they know best, the partners that they typically work with, and so on and so forth. So CHROs can help with the work around just nudging their colleagues to think about different partnerships that could benefit them, exposing them to some of the work that's happening elsewhere in the organization. And it serves 2 purposes. One is we help to bring different collaborations to bear where individuals could contribute from their functional knowledge, from their experience, and so on and so forth. But the more we work with different organizations or different individuals across the organization on collaboration, the more we're also aligned as an executive team. as well. And so these are places where we see CHROs really step in, use the benefit of their role to drive the organization towards better collaboration.